let's jump into the next session. So for those of you who have joined later, let me just remind everyone what NSF Prepare is about. And I want to put it in the words of Wendy Nielsen, how she put it in the initial address at the beginning, that Prepare is about building a community of interdisciplinary research to break down these silos and to capture those isolated sheep. I think that the metaphor that she brought was very nice. So that our goal is to foster collaborations. In our next mini session, we will have work on education, training, and workforce development. And special thanks go to Nora Garza and Jennifer Hamilton for volunteering to serve as co-moderators. They will guide these discussions after the lightning talks. And our first presenter is Niu Gao. Take it away.
Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Niu Gao, and I'm a senior fellow at the Public Policy Institute of California. This project is a close partnership with the California Department of Education. Today, more than 40 states, serving more than 70% of the students, have science standards influenced by the Next Generation Science Standards, or NGSS. If implemented well, NGSS could catalyze improvement in science teaching and learning. However, COVID-19 brought unprecedented challenges in K-12 schools. And in our study, we hope to provide some early data about the pandemic impact from California, which is one of the early implementation states. We're also interested in understanding the disproportionate impact on districts serving a large share of low-income, Black, and Latino students. And last, we are interested in identifying the policy levers that could support a more equitable science education post-pandemic and beyond. So we launched a statewide survey of school districts. We also surveyed members of the California Science Teachers Association. In the interest of time, I would just highlight the finding that given the massive and also unprecedented challenges brought by COVID-19, only a quarter of the school districts reported science being a high priority in their education recovery plans post-pandemic and beyond. Whereas more than 90% of districts at math or English language arts are a priority. We also look at, districts' local control accountability plans. Those are official documents coming from districts, and those plans provided more details. And very few districts are dedicating funding specifically to science. And compared to the previous year, which is the pre-pandemic year, we actually see a decrease in the mention of science or NGSS specifically. And instead, we saw an increase of lumping science together with other subjects, such as STEM or CTE. Our interviews with state and also local stakeholders are still ongoing. Overall, the project has gone well as planned. The collaboration with our practitioner partners and the California Department of Education, the engagement of our advisory group members, as well as statewide advocacy groups are just phenomenal. We did run into some challenges due to COVID-19, and I think this might have affected your research as well. So for instance, district and also school staff, they're incredibly busy. So they're less likely to respond to survey or interview requests. So as a result, we had to keep the survey open for a longer period of time. We also had to spend a lot of time doing outreach. And in so many cases, we actually had to reschedule our interviews because they have a COVID case in their school. The remaining challenges are mostly about the uncertainty of the course of the pandemic and how that will affect district plans. And there are several interesting questions for future collaborations. So the first is how districts plan to spend the massive amount of federal and also state stimulus dollars. So for instance, what shares of those money actually goes to science programs. And also we saw some interesting innovations during COVID-19. So for instance, very creative use of outdoor spaces for science exploration. So it will be interesting to see, how many of those may persist. And after all of this, after understanding district responses, we need to look at to what extent those responses may lead to a better and also more equitable student outcomes in science education. So the pandemic hopefully will be soon over, but its impact on science education will take several years to unfold. So I think the research community could benefit from a specific program focusing on understanding pandemic responses and impact, so it's easier to plan. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Wolfgram, and I'm going to get us started off. We're from the Center for Research on College Workforce Transitions, which is a translational research unit at the University of Wisconsin. Our main goals are to do research that can impact the education and career preparation for all learners. So we're going to talk a little bit about our rapid research on college internships during the pandemic. At CCWT, at the Center for Research on College Workforce Transitions, we have a large multi-sited, multi-year study on the impacts of college internships. And things that we're looking at in that study are who's taking internships, how are they benefiting from internships? These include outcomes, employment, and psychosocial outcomes from internships, and then obstacles or barriers to internship participation that certain students might be facing and what can be done to help with that. And then during the pandemic and with funding from NSF, we shifted a little bit to focus in particular on the impact of online internships and what was going on during the pandemic. So we administered a survey to students with junior and senior standing at 17 participating institutions. This survey is called the National Survey of College Internships. Actually, Hongwei is the director of the National Survey of College Internships. You'll hear from him in a second. So this is our first round of it, and we want it to grow. You can see our sample here, about 12,000 students with a 4.5% response rate. Some of our findings: students who took internships both online and in person during the pandemic, only 21% of students in the survey had participated in an internship. So we surveyed juniors and seniors because we sort of think like by that time, if they're going to do an internship, they will have kind of had a chance to do it. So we kind of focus on that population. About 50% of that, so among these students, 9% of students participated in the online versus in-person internships, and then a smaller, 1.5% participated in a kind of hybrid sort of thing. So what we're going to talk about today are three things. So when we do this national survey, we feedback what we call the internship scorecard indicators. So there's three things in the scorecard that we give institutions. We tell them about the prevalence of internships that their students are taking. We tell them about the quality of internships that their students are taking. And we identify for them obstacles that their students might be facing to participate in internships. One of the things we found when we survey students in our various studies is that many of them who have not been able to participate in internships, I say that they want to. So usually 60-70% of students who don't participate in internships are motivated to do so, would desire to do so, but they face barriers. So these are the three sort of like indicators that we feed back to students, to policymakers and educational leadership about their students' internship participation. So Hongwei is going to talk about the data we can share with you.
Thank you. So in this section, I'm going to share with you the research findings based on the items from each of the indicators Matt had just shared with you. So for this graph, you will see that the non-STEM majors, such as social science students, are more likely to take the online internship. But the STEM major students, such as the students from the health majors, as well as students from the biological sciences, natural sciences, they're more likely to take the in-person internship. So for this one, in terms of the quality of the internship, we look at the students' satisfaction. So students who participated in online internship, they are less likely to be very satisfied or extremely satisfied when compared with the in-person internship students. So the difference is about 10%. So there's a huge difference. We also look at the task they perform. You will say that students from the online internship students, they are less likely to receive the high skills with supervision compared with in-person internship students. The gap is also about 10% or 11%. So in terms of the equitable access, we found that students who take the online internship, they are less likely to get paid. So you will say the green bar here is about like 7 or 8%. So to summarize that, the students who take the online internship, they are less likely to be satisfied with their internship experiences, and they are less likely to get paid. For those students they are less likely to receive the high-skill task with supervision, which are really important aspect of the experiential learning. And more importantly, I think the STEM major students are less likely to take the online internship, either because of the nature of the job, also because maybe the availability of the internship positions. So next, I will hand it over back again to Matt to talk about the roadmap and then the products.
So real quickly, there's a lot of interest in online internships, particularly during the pandemic. There's also a hope that online internships can provide sort of more equity to the access to the internship space. However, we see some problems here, some decreased quality, decreased access, the issue of unpaid versus paid. So those are some issues. Some strengths of our research is that we're getting good, robust results from the National Survey of College Internships. Some other things, remaining challenges, just in general, the finding is that there's a high desire among students to prepare for their careers using internships, but there's just a lack of that in the market right now, or there's much decreased supply of that. Let's see, collaborations with learning sciences to design better workplace learning tasks, better supervision and mentorships. These are all sort of areas where employers and educators can collaborate to increase access and quality. And I would say, a suggestion is that while there's some promise and excitement associated with online internships, there are some concerns as well. They need to be well scaffolded and include mentorship and things like that. Yes, so these are some of our reports with lots of data and recommendations related to the internship space. Also in the middle here, you see the icon for the National Survey of College Internships. We'd love it if institutions enroll in this, and we provide information, their scorecard about the prevalence, quality, and barriers to their internships for them to act upon. So Hongwei is the director, and we look forward to anyone interested in engaging with us and for that in the future. Thanks very much, everyone.
Well, thank you very much for inviting us. We're eternally grateful to the National Science Foundation to have this rapid grant to allow us to work with students. We are a 2-year college, which is different from hard research and things like that, but nonetheless, very, very important. My co-PI is Gabriela Solis-Cavazos, and she's the one that has been directly working with the students. So I'm going to turn it over to her so she can explain what we did and some of the effects and some of the results. Thank you.
So our project really concentrated on that most of our students here at Laredo College lack or are not as prepared when it comes to analyzing quantitative data. So the whole purpose was to create a foundation for them where they were going to learn about numeracy skills and improve it in their quantitative reasoning skills. And in order to do that, our rapid program included 12 rapid research assistant students, 6 rapid faculty, and faculty development for the 6 rapid faculty, where they learned how to teach their students quantitative reasoning skills in their lessons. And these students also did COVID-19 data analysis research. There was approximately 20 lessons that we did spread out throughout a year. And in doing so as well, the students used their data that they found on COVID-19 to perform undergraduate research. Overall, the project overview is to engage students and generate knowledge on teaching and learning about COVID-19. And we thought this was going to be a great idea, especially because we were going through the COVID-19 pandemic and it caught the students' interest. And that's what we wanted them to be. We wanted them to be interested in doing research. And what better way to do it by actually going through it. So they lived through it and they were curious and wanted to know what was going on and about the vaccines, about the symptoms. So then a second objective was to enhance quantitative reasoning skills in our LC STEM students. So they learned how to analyze surveys, how to analyze the data they got from thermometer readings. They each received their own thermometer and would take temperature daily and create their own figures, create their own graphs on the thermometer reading. Another objective was to teach and assist research assistants in gathering, interpreting, and analyzing their own quantitative data. And that's where their own research comes into play. Okay, so for activities, we had the undergraduate research. And overall, we ended up with 6 research papers from each of our students. Some of them worked in groups. That's why it lowered down to 6. And 6 posters. They also learned how to create their own posters from their research projects. Their research projects were all COVID-19 related, and they had to analyze quantitative data. That was the whole purpose of their research paper. As for the professional development, like I said, we had 6 faculty. Every week we had a lesson, and they provided students with activities. If they had questions, we met through Zoom and went through them. So some of the lessons that we went through was going over tables and charts and scatter plots, making sure they knew how to gather the data from these figures and be able to analyze it and be able to give us answers regarding those charts. We also taught them how to find these peer-reviewed articles of COVID-19 data so they can use them for their research. So here we have 2 posters from some of our rapid research assistants, and then we have our group of rapid research assistant students all together. This was during the summer, and they were also participating during the summer bridge program. And some of the activities that the faculty would do was like a Jeopardy game where they learned how to tell the difference between quantitative or qualitative data. They got questions in regards to, is this data showing, is it quantitative or qualitative, or how would you explain this, and so forth. And we tried different ways in order for them to understand how to analyze the quantitative skills and how to come up with their own graphs as well. So it was a little hard, especially because at the beginning, due to COVID-19, everything we did was through Zoom at the beginning of the semester. But this also limited us in the number of recruits we could get as students. And the reason being is all these students had a lot of stuff going on. They were still going to classes, some of them worked. So it really limited the time they could spend on as a rapid research assistant. And they really wanted to meet in person, but due to the restrictions we had with our college as well, we couldn't start meeting with them till the end of the second semester of the year. So we would have to meet through Zoom. And this was a conflict because sometimes we had internet issues, the Zoom meetings wouldn't work, and we had a freeze during in Texas for a while. And it also caused us to be down for, I think, 2 weeks. But we finally did get to meet in person, which was in the summer 2021. And I currently still have some of them here for fall 2021. And I'm happy because they are now teaching what they've learned to other students. They are now mentors themselves and are currently helping these students actually analyze their own data and write their own research paper and create their own posters. So what are some remaining challenges is that these students, the rapid research assistants, are working on trying to get their papers published. So we're looking at a journal, the Journal of Young Investigators, to be exact, to see if we can get these students published and out there, and also to have them present their research. We've been trying our best to apply to as many conferences for them where they can go online themselves and present, so they can have that skills once they move to a university. An area for collaboration is internship opportunities. We want to try and find internship opportunities for these students so they can grow and learn new skills, and also presenting opportunities. Another need or area for collaboration would most probably be more information on faculty development. Suggestions for NSF would be to continue broaden participation of minority and underrepresented groups in STEM.
So we're going to be talking about the effect of the COVID university closures and the transition to online learning for Black and African American students in physics. So I'm Anne-Marie Porter. I'm not the PI, but I did all the analysis, so I can talk to you about that. Just to give a little context, this is a continuation of a task force called Team Up that was specifically charged for physics and to help Black and African American students. So that's why it's restricted to just that area. So the way we looked into this is we sent an online survey to undergraduate physics students. And as long as they took a course between March and August within the pandemic, they were qualified to participate. We asked about their experiences in their courses, their university's response, and their access to resources. So we wanted to do 2 major comparisons here. And you might notice the way that we've coded race and ethnicity might explain this a little bit. So we wanted to compare African American students and white student experiences, but we also split African Americans into 2 groups. In a check all that apply question, one group is if they only selected African American, and another group if they were a multiracial individual and they selected African American and something else because we didn't think these experiences would be the same. So I just wanted to clarify that. And unsurprisingly, most of our participants did select white. 4% only selected African American, and 2% selected African American and at least one other race and ethnicity. So what we wanted to see is if Black and African Americans had the same experience as before COVID, a worse experience, or a better experience. And as it turned out, their experience was actually better than before COVID. And even the open-ended comments straight up said it. They said, yep, I liked online learning better than in-person learning. So it turns out these students felt more belonging in their physics courses and their physics department. They felt more confident about getting full-time employment, applying to graduate school, and majoring in physics. They were more likely to receive an internship, and they were more likely to receive CARES Act funding during COVID-19. So this was a very pleasant surprise. And while I don't know the specific reasons, I can enlighten it a little bit based on the open-ended comments. So these students felt they had better access to teachers through virtual office hours. They felt it was easier to connect and work with students virtually in study groups. It felt less competitive to them. They felt that they had more time to devote to studying because they didn't have to worry about commuting or parking or walking to their courses. And I do know that certain organizations specifically gave out internships for Black and African American students, which might also explain why they got more internships during this time, because they were specifically targeted for that group. So overall, these students definitely had a more positive experience, but this doesn't mean that they didn't have any problems at all. Just like every other student, they struggled with not interacting with their professors sometimes, or struggling with their mental health, or struggling to learn online. It's just compared to the other groups, they did better. So just wanted to clarify that. And this also doesn't mean that the problems they had in person have been solved or have disappeared. So the reason they had an improvement is because they struggled so much with their confidence and their sense of belonging before. So now that universities are resuming in person, it's going to be really important that the universities ensure that these gains are maintained, that they still have this sense of confidence and sense of belonging, and that they might have more flexible options available to them, such as virtual office hours, since those in-person options were difficult for them. And lastly, I wasn't able to put it in the slide, but we did find that the Black and African only group did have these improvements, whereas the mixed race group did not. So the Black, African American, and other race and ethnicities did not have the same improvements. So another just caveat to make sure when you're studying this group of individuals, you might want to separate it that way in the future, because they don't seem to have the same experience.